Good morning, good afternoon, and welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us today for this webinar where we will launch the EPIC Deploy Call for Proposals, which aims at promoting international cooperation in sustainable cooling with the goal of implementing the Global Cooling Pledge. Indeed, EPIC stands for Enabling Pledge Implementation for Cooling. And allow me to present myself. My name is Rossella Rubini, and I work as an associate expert in the Sustainable Investments Unit at the United Nations Environment Programme, and I'm based in Nairobi, Kenya. I am delighted to moderate today's session. And thank you. We're really pleased to see such a wide array of actors across different private, public, and nonprofit organizations joining us today. Before we begin, I would like to acknowledge that EPIC Deploy is supported by the Italian Ministry of Environment and Energy Security, which continues to play a critical role in advancing climate action and sustainable energy solutions globally, and especially across Africa. Additionally, I extend our recognition and thanks to this program's technical advisors, Politecnico di Milano, and the specialized implementation partner of UNEP, MASE, all of whom are working hard alongside us in accelerating the deployment of sustainable cooling solutions. Next slide, please. On the screen, you will find a snapshot of the agenda as a reminder, but really the purpose of today's webinar is to help you, potential applicants, better understand the opportunities offered through the call, the eligibility requirements, application procedures, and the types of projects that the initiative aims to support. The very last thing before we dive in, please note a couple of housekeeping points. This session is being recorded, and all the presentation materials will be shared after the event on our website, which we'll paste as a reminder in the chat. Also, we kindly ask all participants to keep their microphones on mute throughout the presentations. As we have more than 400 registrants, we will keep the session orderly and organized in this way. This takes me to the third point. Please submit your questions through the Q&A function. So there is a chat function and a Q&A function, and we will address as many questions as possible during the dedicated Q&A session. Thank you in advance for your participation and engagement. And without further ado, to open today's webinar, we will hear about the broader vision behind the EPIC Deploy initiative and its strategic objectives. It's an honor to introduce you to Alessandro Guerri, Director General for European and International Affairs and Sustainable Finance at the Italian Ministry of Environment and Energy Security. Direttore Guerri, a lei la parola.
Thank you so much, Rossella, and in particular for your meaningful introduction. I could say that I have few to add after your speech, so really thank you. And good morning to all the participants. I have to start by thanking our partners, UNEP, and also Politecnico di Milano, our engineering university, together with participating companies and all the other stakeholders that have joined us today here. Indeed, we are here to launch the EPIC Call for Proposal, and during the webinar, we are going to analyze the objectives and opportunities offered by the call, and above all, to raise awareness among stakeholders on its potential. This call is intended to be both practical and strategic, and reply to the question on how can we turn technological innovation into industrial projects, international partnership, and new opportunities for growth in the target countries. Sustainable cooling is set to become one of the fastest growing sectors in the years ahead. It is both a measure of mitigation and adaptation at climate change, and in particular in Europe in this period, we are experiencing the challenges of heat waves. Indeed, demand for efficient, low carbon and innovative solution is rising rapidly across urban infrastructure, public buildings, industrial logistics, and cold chains. This represents a major global challenge, but also a significant opportunity for industry. With this in mind, the Italian Ministry of Environment and Energy Security is strengthening its international cooperation initiatives. And these initiatives help advancing environmental and energy objectives while also promoting technologies, expertise, and engineering capabilities on international level and markets. Initiatives like this also contribute to the Italian contribute to international finance that is raising in the last years, and we have reached last year the remarkable result of 3.4 billion of contribution, being one of the best performing European countries and also at the international level, guaranteeing to the international and multilateral system a reliable partner. The approach we are describing today with this call is built around three priorities: the development of pilot projects, the creation of strong public-private partnership across institutions, research organizations, and businesses, and the promotion of scalable and replicable solutions that can be adapted for different countries and regional contexts. In its first phase, the initiative will focus on a number of specific partner countries that includes Brazil, Morocco, Tunisia, Kenya, and Ethiopia. Demand for sustainable cooling technologies is growing rapidly in these countries, creating important opportunities for the industrial cooperation, technology transfer, and capacity building. Italy, indeed, is fully committed together with UNEP at that multilateral level, both during the negotiation phases and the cooperation ones. And we think hopefully well placed to play a leading role in this context. Our industrial and scientific ecosystem brings together highly specialized companies, engineering firms, university, and research centers. In particular, the role of public institutions is extended to connect the capabilities, facilitate international partnership, and help innovative ideas to move from concept to implementation. All in all, the ultimate goal of this call is to encourage strong project proposals that combine technological quality, practical feasibility, and the potential to generate lasting environmental, economic, and social benefit. And as we know, and as first prerequisite, I would say, being country-driven, because part of the consortia that will lead the proposal will be composed also by local representatives of the communities. I would like to thank all the partners involved for their valuable contribution, and I'm confident that this call for proposal will lead to effective partnership and successful project through UNEP and with the technical support of Polytechnic Milan. I thank you all for your attention, and I wish a productive webinar. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, DG Guerri, for sharing with us your perspective on international cooperation and the importance of promoting sustainable cooling as part of broader climate and sustainable development efforts. Now it is my pleasure to introduce you to Hongpeng Lei, Chief of Mitigation Branch in UNEP's Climate Change Division. Hongpeng, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Rosella. Dear Honorable DG Guerri, distinguished colleagues, representatives from government, academia, the private sector, development partners, and all participants joining us today. Good morning. It's a pleasure to welcome you to the launch of EPIC Deploy Call for Proposals. First of all, let me start by expressing UNEP's sincere appreciation to the government of Italy, and in particular, the Ministry of Environment and Energy Security, for its leadership and partnership in advancing sustainable cooling solutions through the EPIC Deploy initiative. Italy has demonstrated how international cooperation can move beyond commitments and translate global ambition into action on the ground. The EPIC Deploy initiative is an excellent example of how countries can support implementation of the Global Cooling Pledge and help accelerate the transition towards sustainable cooling systems. The world has made a significant progress in recent years in recognizing cooling as a critical climate and development issue. The launch of a global cooling pledge at COP28 marked an important turning point. Governments acknowledged that cooling is not simply an energy challenge. It is ultimately a development challenge, a resilience challenge, and more recently, as we have seen across multiple heat waves, a public health challenge. Yet, while awareness has increased, the urgency of the challenge continues to grow. In 2021 alone, more than 500,000 people died from extreme exposure globally. This represents an increase of over 60% compared to the 1990s. Every climate scenario tells us that heat-related risks will continue to intensify in the coming decades. It is important to recognize that sustainable cooling must be at the heart of a global energy agenda. Achieving SDG 7 today is no longer only about expanding access to energy. It is also about ensuring that energy protects lives, strengthens resilience, supports economic opportunities, and enables development for all. Unfortunately, access to cooling remains one of the least visible dimensions of energy poverty. Today, more than 1 billion people are considered highly vulnerable because they lack access to adequate cooling. As temperatures rise, heat is amplifying existing inequalities and placing disproportionate burdens on the most vulnerable populations. For UNEP, this makes cooling not only a climate issue, but also a question of equity and justice. At the same time, cooling delivers benefits far beyond thermal comfort. Cooling protects vaccines and medicines, helping health systems function effectively. Cooling preserves food and reduces post-harvest losses throughout agricultural value chains. Cooling enables children to learn in safer and healthier classrooms. Cooling supports businesses, industries, logistic networks, and digital infrastructure. A case in point is the agri-food sector. Approximately 13% of food produced globally is lost between harvest and retail, much of it due to inadequate cold chains and insufficient refrigeration infrastructure. Available technologies and sustainable cooling practice already offer solutions that can significantly expand access while reducing emissions. This is why implementation matters. We have seen encouraging policy progress between 2015 and 2022. The number of countries with national cooling policies increased from 21 to 176. Policies alone do not cool hospitals, improve cold chains, reduce food losses, or protect vulnerable populations from heat. The next challenge is delivery, demonstration, and then investment. And this is precisely where EPIC Deploy comes in. Through this initiative, UNEP and the government of Italy are helping bridge the gap between policy ambition and the practical implementation. EPIC Deploy focuses on sectors where sustainable cooling can generate the greatest economic, social, and environmental benefits. Equally important, EPIC Deploy promotes collaboration. The complexity of today's cooling challenges requires partnerships that bring together governments, researchers, technology providers, financial actors, and the local communities. By encouraging international consortia and public-private cooperation, this initiative seeks to create replicable models that can be scaled and adapted beyond the initial pilots. Ultimately, our objective is not only to support individual projects. Our objective is to generate evidence, attract investment, build local capacity, and demonstrate that sustainable cooling solutions can work for people, for economies, and for the climate. My hope is that projects emerging from this call will become examples that inspire broader action across regions and sectors, helping countries transform their cooling systems while advancing their climate and development goals. Let me close by once again thanking the government of Italy for its vision and its commitment. We hope this initiative will encourage other partners to follow suit and invest in sustainable cooling solutions that deliver benefits for people, prosperity, and the planet. I also thank all participants joining us today for your interest and engagement. I wish you a very good webinar and application process. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Hongpeng, for sharing UNEP's vision on sustainable cooling and the role that EPIC Deploy can play in accelerating implementation on the ground. We're right on time according to our agenda. So having explored the broader vision, we will now move to the practical aspects of the call of proposals itself. Our next speaker is Miriam Tuhami, Head of Sustainable Investments Unit in UNEP's Climate Change Division, and she'll present the practical elements of the call for proposals. Miriam, over to you.
Thank you, Rosie. Thank you, General Director, Dr. Guerri. Thank you, Hongpeng. Thank you, colleagues, and welcome to this launch of the webinar. It is my pleasure to introduce you the technical aspects of what we expect from you if you want to apply. We would be delighted to really implement underground really some innovative projects, strong projects. So I will be able to explain, to give you the objectives, the geographic scope, the type of intervention, everything that you need to know to be able to answer the call for proposal. And of course, we will have also a Q&A question afterwards. We'll be able to answer all the questions. If we cannot do it during this webinar, we will send you back emails, but all your questions will be answered. Next slide, please. So thank you to the Italian Ministry for the funding to help us to convey and to introduce this EPIC Deploy. The objective of EPIC is really to enable countries to go from pledges to plans to local impact. You know, we hear a lot of, usually we hear a lot of countries pledging funding, and then we hear people and countries and projects not being able to access that funding. Here we will be very clear, concise, and show you how you can apply to the funding and how we can support pilot projects with really high potential and improvement in energy efficiency, long-term sustainability, and of course to contribute to our climate resilience, socio-economic development, and alignment with the international climate and development priorities. Next slide, please. So the call for proposal that we'll be launching, next slide, please, that we are launching today. Who can really participate? So what we expect from UNEP, we would like to have international consortium, meaning we would like to have, they can be composed of public, private, non-governmental, research entities, but all of them need to have proven experience in sustainable cooling sector. The consortium should be led by one entity. So the one entity will be the lead applicant. We will have that lead applicant, we will have all the full contractual and fiduciary responsibility. So of course, the UNEP will be able to talk to the one lead applicant, but the lead applicant is responsible to have all his partners committed via a consortium agreement. The mandatory partnership is very important. We need to have a very strong local content and local presence. Taking into account that we are working in these countries, it's important to have people locally engaged. And of course, by showing that, we need to have a letter of intent or a memorandum of understanding that will be signed by all the partners of the consortium. But the responsibility, again, the legal one and the contractual one and the fiduciary one, meaning who will be receiving the funds and the person who will be reporting to UNEP will be the lead applicant. Next slide, please. So the support that we will provide, our funding, we will fund few thematics, but let me just provide you first with the timing. So the project should be implemented within 24 months. However, we allow an additional 12 months for reporting, and monitoring. And it is important, however, that the project gets fully implemented within 24 months. The amount that will be provided as a grant, we will provide at least $200,000, okay? That will exclude the co-funding. Co-funding meaning money given by the applicant, by the consortium. The maximum will be 1.2 million euros. Actually, there must be a mistake there, but the minimum should be €200,000. So the grant that we provide is a minimum of 200,000 euros, and the maximum is 1.2 million euros. The co-funding, meaning the amount that is being provided by the lead applicant and by its partners, is a minimum of 20% of the grant amount. So the co-funding can be either in cash or in kind. It can come from different sources. It can come from own equity, own money of the applicants. It can come from development finance institution. It can come from any other international donors, but mainly usually based on our experience on other projects that we have implemented. Most of the time, the funds come from the own resources of the lead applicant and its partners. Not all the consortium members are required to provide co-funding, but the total should meet the minimum requirements of the 20% co-funding of the grant amount. Next slide, please. So what the grant amount will be able to pay for? It can pay for overhead. We have set a ceiling maximum of 20%. It can pay also for project management, that also maximum of 7%. It can cover some hardware purchases, software costs, installation costs, training costs, working hours costs, some travel expense. We usually, when we do the evaluation, we really give priority to projects that are really very efficient. Of course, like I said, if we put travel costs are covered, but if we see a lot, that will be a negative point during the evaluation. We can also cover some meeting and events costs, communication activities, any kind of spare and maintenance, considering that the project will be implemented in 24 months. But we give an additional 12 months for operation maintenance. That is also where, if there is a need to purchase spare costs, it is why we put the cost of spare costs can be covered by the grant amount. Next slide, please. So now that you have the amount of money that we will be able to provide you, now that you have the minimum requirements of what can be provided by the consortium, the eligible project that we will be able to finance are of type 1. First, it's the tertiary sector. It can be universities, public facilities, hospitals, any kind of tertiary sector that is eligible, can be eligible. And then the eligible projects can have renewable energy integration. They can have smart building management and sustainable technologies, facility operation, technical capacity. It is important for us to address the needs of those tertiary sectors. It is important to respond to the need of the local local needs in the countries. And it is once again very important to work with the local stakeholders to ensure that the technology is being provided by international suppliers and then by international engineer companies, and kind of respond to the needs of those local needs of the hospitals, of the schools, of the public. It can also be public buildings. Tertiary sector is one of the types. The second type, next slide please, of the projects that are being eligible are the industrial sector and cold chain. We know because we have 4 countries in Africa, and as you know, agriculture and food value chains and logistics are very important in these countries. So we also put a special emphasis on ports. So, so the cold chain and the industrial sector, also in the agriculture sector, is extremely important. So we would like to upgrade and optimize industrial refrigeration systems. We can also finance reliable and scalable sustainable food cold chain solutions. It is important also maybe to think of some smart monitoring and predictive maintenance, ensuring service continuity. So for us, the ports, are also, this is where, it starts, a lot of agriculture farmers, they produce, but unfortunately, by the time they would like to export or to send to a different city, the food is lost. So the refrigeration is extremely important for these African countries. Next slide, please. And the 5 countries we're working on are Ethiopia, Kenya, Tunisia, and Morocco. Those are in the 4 African countries. And of course, we also have Brazil. Taking into account there is a very huge requirements and needs in Brazil, and Brazil was the last COP country. So it is important for us to also have projects in that region. Next slide, please. So the timeline, today is the launch. But before that, we have already done an assessment. We have tried to engage many partners. We have done some preliminary studies and feasibility studies. We need to check with our colleagues from Politecnico di Milano to see which out of those studies can be publicly made available, and we will make them publicly made available, some of them. So all the assessments have been completed and done, and thank you, Polimi, for that and for the great job. And today is the launch of the call for proposal, and then we will give you until 31 of October, sorry, to respond to the call for proposal. We know we are entering a summer season, so August is a month that is usually a very quiet month, so we decided to leave the call for proposal open until October 31. That will be the deadline. And after that, we will enter a project selection process where we're going to do a preliminary screening that will be announced of how many projects have been will be pre-selected. It will be announced at the next COP in Turkey in November. And then the assessment of those projects will be based on 3 different criteria. One is the transformational impact and sustainability. We will apply 40% of the grade for that, how your project will be able to transform its impact and how sustainable that impact is on whatever sector or type you will be using. We will also apply 20% of the grade on scalability, replicability, and additionality. This is a pilot because we're looking for innovative projects in the cooling sector, but those projects will need to be replicable and scalable because we'd like to apply them in other countries and other regions. And then we will apply 40% as a final grade for the technical feasibility, monitoring and reporting, and also financial sustainability. It is important for you to understand, even though you will be getting could be quite large amount of grant, we will look into the financial sustainability because our objective is to show that we are providing and selecting projects that could be later on potentially bankable. Our objective is to provide support to innovative projects with the objective for you to grow and to potentially go to a bank and be able to get a loan and then improve and increase and make a project much larger. And also those pilots for us are a reason to show real financiable and bankable projects to be able to replicate those projects. So please keep in mind when you do your projects, don't say, oh, we are getting X amount of grants. Those projects should be financially viable, okay? Because our objective again is to get them later on the same example of projects funded by financial institutions. Then once we do the full assessment of under the 3 criteria, we will have a short list of projects, and that once we have selected the best projects, they will go into due diligence. And due diligence means we will come to your country where the project will be implemented. We will evaluate, we will make sure that all what have been put on your proposal is what you will be providing on the ground. Then once we have completed due diligence, and then we are happy with all the partners of your consortium, we are happy with the content and how strong and viable your project is, then we will move into the funding decision, the signing of the agreement between UNEP and your consortium, but the lead applicant of the consortium, and we will do a public announcement that your project has been selected. Next slide, please. So once, of course, you start the implementation, and then when it starts working, you will be working with our partners, Polyme and the BASE, our collaborating center. So we will request you to provide a semi-annual progress report. Of course, we will give you the format. We will guide you and we'll be with you on every single process. You will have, however, because we'll be providing you some funding, your responsibility, the financial responsibility and the contractual responsibility is to get back to us. And of course, us to check, and also us to do a random checking once in a while. So your responsibility will be to provide semi-annual progress report, showing all the implementation status, the outputs and the outcomes, the ones that we have had agreed upon while we will be doing the contracting. You will have to submit audited financial statements and financial reports in line with UNEP requirement, and that once again we will provide you with all the details. And then you will have to participate in monitoring activities that we will do on site. Some of them will be virtual. And of course, we will ask you to contribute to communication, visibility, and knowledge sharing activities. Please consider and remember that we are using public money coming from the Italian ministry. So it is our responsibility as UNEP, along with yours, to make sure that money is being used efficiently, with a very high impact. And it is also our responsibility as UNEP to also showcase and make visible all the projects that have been financed by using the public money. So it is mandatory for all the consortium, and it will be also written in the contract that you will have to attend some of the events that we will be organizing to showcase the results, and to also to provide and to showcase all your results of the projects. Some of them will be might be shown at different international events like COP. So it is important that your consortium agrees to be part of all that knowledge sharing activities. Next slide, please. And of course, and I cannot thank enough Polymie and thank you, Alberto, for all your efforts and the great, work that you've been doing. So we have prepared a multi-country assessment studies on all the 5 countries that we are addressing here. We have Polymie using all their engineers. They have analyzed all the cooling demands on the selected countries. They went through all the key technologies in the cooling subsectors. They have identified all the market enablers and barriers. So we have also identified all the investment opportunities. So we do have something that we can share with you that is really strategic, some recommendations to take into account. We would like you to, I will need to check with Polymie first if those information can be publicly made. I think we should be able to. And then I think it's important to really, for us, along with the Italian ministry, we are bound with the responsibility to make the environment much better, to have CO2 emissions reduced. We are bound by the Paris Agreement. So we need to make sure that our recommendations are being followed, and that you're responding and working with us towards that objective of CO2 emissions. And that's why it is extremely important that you go through those recommendations, and then your proposals will be evaluated using the 3 criteria. But the overall objective is always to have the CO2 emissions reduction, and helping also those countries to address their needs, many, especially the ones in Africa where they really lag behind. But and then with your help and with your technology, with your know-how, I know that I've met several suppliers and engineering companies in Europe. I mean, a transfer of know-how and technology is extremely important for those African countries to help them to grow better. This project is a call for proposal for pilot projects, but what we are preparing are pilots, but we are mainly preparing a market. We are not just doing one project. We would like your entities, your companies to start with a pilot, but to do a lot more projects on those countries and the neighboring countries. Next slide. So yeah, so that's the end. Of course, there will be later on a Q&A questions. I will be able to answer all your questions along with my colleagues, but I'll give you back the floor, Rosie.
Thank you very much, Miriam, for the clear overview of the call requirements and the application process. Again, I remind everyone we'll shortly have the Q&A session, so please do note down your questions. We'll now move from the procedural aspects of the call to practical examples of what successful projects could look like in practice. It's my pleasure to introduce Alberto Benincasa, researcher at Relab Politecnico, for his technical presentation on the target 5 countries supported under the EPIC Deploy initiative. Alberto, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Rossella. So I will share my presentation. Okay. So first of all, good morning, everyone, and thank you all for coming. In 15 minutes, I cannot give you the 5-country reports, so I'm not going to try it. But what I want to give you is instead one governing idea per country, and just enough evidence to show why it holds. The call prioritized 3 subsectors: healthcare, education, and the food healthcare, education, and the food cold chain. I will cover all 3 in every country. One thread runs through everything. In these subsectors, cooling is not comfort, it is service continuity. A vaccine refrigeration out of range is a clinical failure. A classroom at 34 degrees is a learning failure. A crop loss between field and market is an income failure. Start with Brazil. Brazil has already solved the problem that most people assume is the problem with regards to climate change. The grid is nearly 99% renewable, and the emission factor is about 0.06 kilograms of CO2 per kilowatt hour. Efficiency still matters here, but a proposal built only on kilowatt hours saved will understate its own climate benefit. Here is why. Once electricity is that clean, the emissions move into the refrigerant. In our school model, leakage is about 3/4 of the footprint. Healthcare behaved the same way. So the Brazilian project is above all a refrigerant project. Low GWP selection, leak tight installation, and end-of-life recovery. The same logic points to ammonia and CO2 in the cold chain, and that is where the load genuinely sits. Meat and poultry process refrigeration accounts for around 4,000 of our 4,500 gigawatt hours estimated. What remains is not a carbon problem, but an equity problem. Fewer than half of Brazilian classrooms have any mechanical cooling. In the São Paulo state network, it is about 4%. And most public schools run 2 shifts, so the afternoon class sits on the daily heat peak hour. In healthcare, hospitalization rises about 4% for every 5 degrees of hot seasonal temperature, and the worst exposed regions have the least equipment, which give you 3 practical points for a Brazilian application. First, I would suggest to argue your case on learning outcomes and clinical continuity, not kilowatt hours alone. Second, specify efficient low GWP equipment and combine it with roof and shading measures. Those measures reduce the load the equipment has to meet, so the same budget buys a better machine. Third, insist on life cycle procurement criteria. Lowest price tendering is what keeps installing high GWP units. Coming to Ethiopia inverts all of that. Its grid is also exceptionally clean and essentially all hydro, but only about 55% of the country is connected to the electricity grid. That leaves some 60 million people without electricity. Cooling need here follows altitude rather than latitude, and the hottest lowlands are where the grid, the hospitals, and the school are thinnest. The binding constraint then is supply. In healthcare, a field study of Ethiopian public health facilities measured afternoon temperatures up to 34 degrees in wards and delivery rooms. Opening the windows brought that down by 2 to 4 degrees, so ventilation is worth designing for, but on its own, it cannot bring a delivery room into a clinical safe range. Meanwhile, the vaccine chain rests on fragile facilities, and in one regional study, only about 1/3 of facilities had a working backup generator. In education, mechanical cooling is effectively absent, so at the current state, for most tools, the honest answer is orientation and roofing. And in the cold chain, 30 to 50% of horticultural output is lost after harvest, meaning that there is an opportunity. Closing the gap avoids a very substantial volume of emissions. The greenhouse gases embodied in spoiled food far exceed the energy and cold room consumes, so prevent it is an exceptional opportunity. A cold room that runs reliably is a significant emission reduction. 3 practical points and advices then. First, design for autonomy, so like direct drive refrigeration and photovoltaic hybrids. That is the model of the National Facility Solarization Program, now reaching some 300 off-grid sites. Second, design for maintainability. A system nobody nearby can service is not a system. Third, site cold chain equipments and aggregation points, such as cooperative and collection centers. A single unit serves enough throughput to be viable and to be maintained. Going to Kenya, Kenya sits between those two countries, and it carries the lesson people most often miss. Over 90% of Kenyan generation is renewable, and yet firms report roughly 3.5 outages a month. Clean generation and reliable delivery are not the same thing, and it is delivery that decides whether a cooling asset survives. That runs through all three subsectors, since about 30% of governmental facilities lack reliable electricity. That is why the vaccine chain is being rebuilt around solar direct drive units, similarly to what has been done in Ethiopia. Where power does arrive, the installed base does not use it efficiently, and roughly 90% of air conditioners are fixed speed. About a quarter still run on R22 against a phase-out target of 2026. In education, the constraint is more elementary. Class sizes average 50 and reach 80 people, underexposed iron sheet roofing. So the heat arrives through the roof and from the occupants long before anyone considers a machine. And around 30% of food is lost between production and consumption. Cold storage is concentrated in export and formal dairy channels. The domestic first mile goes uncooled. So also here we have an opportunity. One further constraint that kills project quietly is that trained refrigeration technicians are scarce and repairs are expensive. So downtime is long. So 3 practical points. First, specify efficient low GWP equipment and pair it with envelope measures. In schools, start with the roofing. Then the machine is sized for a load you have already reduced. Second, design the power supply so the critical load rides through an outage rather than merely surviving it. Third, budget explicitly for technicians and spare parts. In Kenya, a maintenance plan is part of the technical design, not an annex. Going to Morocco, Morocco is the mirror image of Brazil. Access is essentially universal, so nothing is blocked by connection, but the grid emission factor is 0.83 kilograms per kilowatt hour. That is more than 50 times the emission factor in Ethiopia. So here, straightforward energy savings carry very high carbon value. Every avoided kilowatt hour genuinely pays. That points the strategy also at the building envelope, and the stock is a wide open opportunity. The national thermal regulation dates from 2015 and applies essentially to new constructions. School show this clearly. A Moroccan class holds around 37 pupils, so the occupants themselves are a significant heat source. And that internal load sits on top of the solar gain coming through usually an insulated roof. Hospitals show the other half. Energy use here is on average about 6,300 kilowatt hours per bed per year, against something like 20,000 in fully developed systems. That means that most of the growth in mechanical cooling is still ahead of us, which is why the standards at the design stage will govern operating costs for decades. Moreover, there is also a second constraint. It is easy to miss and expensive to discover late, but Morocco has under 620 cubic meters of renewable water per person per year. That is deep into absolute scarcity. Evaporative cooling is thermodynamically ideal for the dry interior, but irresponsible without a site water budget. The same scarcity strengthens the cold chain case. Produce lost after harvest is irrigation water lost with it. So in the end, here 3 practical points for Morocco. First, size and design to the specific climate zone rather than the national average. Second, treat envelope and equipments as one investment. On this grid, every kilowatt hour the building does not demand is carbon never emitted. Third, assess water alongside energy. A system that looks efficient on paper must also be viable on the site where you intend to put it. Oh, okay. Finally, Tunisia, which is the smallest market of the 5 and the one where everything converges on specific points. One utility, one fuel, one peak. The national utility recorded its all-time peak demand in August 2021 at 4,500 megawatts. It attributed about 44% of the peak to air conditioning alone, and generation is roughly 95% natural gas. So that peak is met by burning gas, which means that in Tunisia, cooling efficiency is an energy security question before it is a climate question. And that is the argument that we land with the counterparties you meet. The subsectors line up behind it. In hospital, we have metered evidence that shows that about half of hospital electricity consumption is accounted to cooling. That makes retrofits high value and valuable crossover because the load peaks with the system, as we discussed. The vaccine picture is less comfortable, as assessment a few years ago found that around 98% of vaccine refrigerators were ordinary domestic appliances rather than pre-qualified medical units. That carries an accidental freezing risk as much as an excursion risk. In education, at least, as in the 8 months fall outside the term. In the cold chain, the leading export is olive oil, which moves at ambient temperature. So the main gap, the real gap, is the domestic and process subsectors. 3 practical points to close. First, value your savings at the peaks and not only across the year. On a gas-fired system, the hours in which you save matters as much as the total. Second, prioritize the equipment where failure is least acceptable. Here, that means medical refrigeration, pre-qualified units, and continuous temperature monitoring. Third, treat the domestic cold chain as the real gap. The export chain is largely ambient, so insulated vehicles and cold stores for the internal market are where a project adds something new. So to close, let me condense 5 ideas, one for each country, into 3. First, the combination is the same everywhere, even though the balance shifts. Efficient equipment does the work. Passive measure make the equipment smaller, cheaper to run, and more resilient during an outage. On-site generation support both. Treat them as one design, not as competing option. Second, know which emission you are chasing before you design. Where the grid is clean, in Brazil and Ethiopia, refrigerant leakage dominates. Where it is carbon intensive, such as in Morocco and Tunisia, avoided consumption is the prize. Kenya sits in between, where the currency is reliability. Getting this wrong does not make a project slightly weaker. It aims at the wrong thing. Third, all of this is screening level. Please do your estimates and collect your operator level data. Because this reports tells you where to look and not what to size, obviously. So back to the 3 subsectors. In healthcare, specify for continuity. In education, the load you remove through the envelope is what makes cooling affordable to install and to run. And if in the food cold chain, closing the gap avoids a substantial volume of emission from food that would otherwise spoil. There is a climate benefit well beyond the energy and the equipment consumption. So thank you for your attention, and I look forward to reading your proposals.
Thank you very much, Alberto, for those very insightful studies and for helping us visualize the kinds of project installations that this initiative seeks to support. We now move to the final part of today's webinar, the question and answer session. Please, there are 3 dots, and there is the chat function and the Q&A function. Many of you are kindly introducing yourselves in the chat, but if you put all your questions in the Q&A, that will help us recognize which ones are the questions, since it's so many of you. So please do introduce yourself, your organization, and country you're joining us from. And I'll start reading the questions now in the Q&A. Could you please clarify if an organization can be part of multiple project proposals composed of different project partners, sending one as coordinator, participating in another one as consortium member only? Thank you. This question, I can actually see where it's from, but Miriam, over to you. Please open your mic, Miriam. Thank you.
The company can be part of few companies, indeed, if it has a very specific expertise to provide to each. But please keep in mind that it will not be possible for that same company to receive a very large amount of funding. So to be clear, because I'm also talking based on our previous experience on another thematic, another project that we had it is difficult for UNEP to identify and to select projects where we see the same company in many projects. So the answer is yes, in a way, if that company has a very specific expertise that it can provide to 2 or 3 consortium. But it has really to be a very specific expertise.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Miriam. I'll read a question that is also about the consortia. Who are the entities eligible to apply? Is it a project execution organization based in Tunisia, such as GIZ, eligible?
No, okay. So what we are trying to get here is we're trying to get private companies working on the ground. We're looking for transfer of technology, transfer of know-how. So international organizations like GIZ or like any other UN institutions will not be eligible. Who are the ones that are eligible are academia, NGOs, private companies, local engineering firms, but not other international organizations.
Perfect. Thank you, Miriam. Somebody extends their thanks. You're most welcome and has this question. So, is the tertiary sector limited only to public buildings, or could be a private hotel or clinic as well be eligible?
Yes, private are eligible.
And then a second question is the aim to have a regional equal share, meaning that at least one PP per country? What is the overall ceiling of the program, or how many PPs can be financed? Many thanks.
So when you say PP, I think you're talking about the public-private
or project
partnerships. Yeah, public-private partnerships. So what we're looking for are, they can be public-private partnerships, indeed. There are no limitation on how many projects will be evaluated. However, the project will be accepted will depend on the amount of funding we have. We have mentioned that the maximum amount of grant is 1.2 million USD. Let me correct that. So we're talking about USD. So there will be no, if there are like 2 or 3 PPPs projects that are sound and the best ones, they can be selected. But there is no maximum of PPPs, but there is a maximum of funding to be given and granted for those projects.
Perfect, thank you. Another question from Maurizio Marrone from Italy, Circle Association for International Cooperation and Development. Thank you. Is it possible to merge 2 different facilities, referring to the 2 different types of interventions? So, for instance, cooling systems and cooling chain in the same project. For example, a cooling system in a hospital and a cooling system for a regional pharmaceutical warehouse integrated with cold chain in the same area in Ethiopia.
Yes, it can be. It makes even the project more innovative. Having cooling and cold chain in one project can be merged and can be done. Yes, so the answer is yes.
Perfect, thank you. A question from Geoffrey Oyugi. Based on the presentation, my understanding is that only African countries mentioned are eligible for this call. As I am based in the Middle East, I would like to inquire whether there is any possibility for the countries in the region may be considered in future proposal calls.
Yes, that will be depending on how much, how successful this first phase is, and if it is, and how much funding we'll be getting next one. But indeed, your region is indeed very hot, and where we can think of it. But for the moment, only the 5 countries are selected for this phase.
Perfect, thank you. So these are all the questions in the Q&A. Now I will go to the chat, but please do help me and put your questions in the Q&A as the chat has a lot of messages. Thank you. So there is one, hello, is the call of proposal open to all value chains that handle temperature sensitive products, horticulture, dairy, fish? Would it be okay to apply and build onto an ongoing similar program funded by a different funder for complementation and scaling?
Yes, indeed, it will be even very appreciated because you based on your other project that you are currently implementing, you already have some lessons learned. And yes, we can finance a complement project.
Perfect, thank you. Luca Invernizzi asks, is it possible to participate as a private professional?
I don't know what that means, but then yes, private companies are eligible. A private professional as a person, but you need to be to belong to a consortium. So your role as a private professional, if I understand it the right way, is that you need to kind of you need still to find companies and consortium to belong to, because only consortiums are allowed to apply.
Indeed, I see many messages of people introducing themselves. That's great. I see you're also making connections between themselves for a potential consortia. That's really amazing. It's really amazing to see. Other questions? I remember seeing one that was asking, there we go. Could you please clarify the minimum and maximum grant amount? If the maximum is 1.2, so it's the maximum project total is 1.2 million, included the 20% of co-funding. The max grant is 1 million. Great maths. Yes, but it's 1 million euros, as Miriam was saying. So the grant amount can go from 200,000 to 1 million. This is the grant amount. So 20% of 1 million is 200,000. That's why the project total project cost can be 1.2 million, as Miriam was explaining. Lots of introductions. That's wonderful. I'm reaching the end. That's it. We answered all the questions. So thank you, Miriam, for helping me answer the questions. And we are right on time. So as we come to the end of today's webinar, on behalf of the Italian Ministry of Environment and Energy Security, UNEP, MASE, and Politecnico di Milano, I would like to sincerely thank you all, the speakers, for sharing their expertise and perspectives, and all participants for your active engagement and thoughtful questions. We hope that today's...
There are more questions, Rosie. There are more questions on the Q&A.
They're coming. Okay. More questions. Oil projects in Morocco. I have some questions in the Q&A. Perfect. Let me go back to the Q&A. So the eligible entities could come from every countries worldwide, but the action needs to be performed in the selected countries, or are some eligibility criteria on where the partners should be based?
Yes, the project should be implemented in the 5 targeted countries. The consortium, the companies applying for the project can come from anywhere in the world. The technology can come from anywhere in the world, but the main the project should be implemented in the country, and it needs to have some local content as well. Meaning, if you're gonna if we're going to have, I don't know, some European technology, and then and some engineering firm coming from the Middle East, and then they all would like to put a consortium together. The project will be implemented in Morocco, for example. You need to have some also local Moroccan entity with you in the consortium.
Perfect. Could you kindly clarify how many project proposals can be submitted by the same lead applicant? So this, the number is one lead applicant per project.
However, let me just add that, like I said earlier, if there is a company who has a very specific expertise, who can be part of several consortium, it can be. But once again, we will be very careful, and we will evaluate very carefully the implication and the role of each partner out of the consortium. But the lead applicant can only apply to one.
Perfect. How many organizations will be selected in this call, estimatedly? Thank you.
We don't know as of today, because that all will depends on the quality of the proposal that will be received. It is for sure that we will select all the ones that are of good quality and then are sound according to our standards. Once we do that, then all those will be, I would say, pre-selected, and they will be announced at COP that we will select X amount of X number of consortiums. However, the one that will go to due diligence and at the end to be funded will depends on the amount of funding that at the end we will have available, for funding.
Perfect. Riccardo Mariani from ICU, based in Tunisia. Should we focus only on the efficient cooling of local food value chain, or also value chains aimed at exporting are positively evaluated? And the second question we've replied already.
I think you can focus on the one for export and for local. What we are looking for, responding to a local need. If the need in Tunisia is to export some of their food, their tomatoes, their fruits, whatever, yes, those are eligible. Anything that is responding to a very specific needs for the country will be evaluated. So not just local, but export is indeed very important. And that's why we put an emphasis on the ports, because we know this is where it starts. At the port, we bring in, we import and we export. And we know that in many African countries, unfortunately, the ports are lacking cold chain technologies and cooling technologies. So that is also a very important point for us.
Perfect. There is a question from Engine Engineering Italy, Energy Manager Experts. Is there any document that shows boundaries of projects, specific targets, what resources are available on the field per each countries and local regulatory laws to follow? Even in innovation projects, we need to know some of these constraints and know who is the other end to collaborate with to address properly. Actually, yes, I was going to mention this in my closing remarks. What you will find at the end of this call, so today we'll upload on our website and on MASE's website, so you have both the links, but we'll paste them again. You will have the registration of this webinar and previous ones. You will have the detailed terms of reference of the project. You will have the Epic Deploy application form, which will need to be completed on Word. You will have the Epic Deploy budget template to help you to be completed on Excel. We'll also have a frequently asked question document, and this will be constantly updated. So even questions from today, you will find them in the FAQ document. And you will also find today's presentation from UNEP and Politecnico. But also, we come to your questions, Ingegnere, you'll have the market readiness and import reports on each of the 5 countries. And this was prepared by our UNEP experts. You will find basically a description of how import rules, product approvals work, energy labeling, local operating requirements that differ across Brazil, Kenya, Ethiopia, Tunisia, and Morocco. So this will be available for you to help you understand the market. We'll also have, Miriam was mentioning, the multi-country assessment per country study by Politecnico, and this will have the cooling demands in selected countries, key technologies in the cooling subsectors, market enablers and barriers, investment opportunities. Everything will be in this document, again, split by country. And so we hope that all this documentation will help you complete an application that is strong, and I hope this answers the question as well. So let me go. Haitam Siguri, is there a database to centralize contact information to find individuals and organizations willing to collaborate on a joint proposal as partners?
I don't know, Rosie, if we do have a consolidated,
No.
but maybe it's a good idea. Maybe we can provide a list of all the contacts that we have of the people maybe who have applied or who have attended this webinar.
The only issue I see is GDPR rules that are very strict, and so some people might want to see all the email addresses and others not.
We don't have this consolidated thing, but maybe what we can do, we can play that role on helping you identify partners. It will be nice maybe that you can contact us. I know, if I read correctly, that you are from University Polytechnic 6, the one in Ben Gurion. So I think we will be happy to try to help you out to identify some potential partners. We do not have a list, but we need maybe to think of how to address that issue. But you can please contact us via email.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. I see one last question. I hope I'm right. Can subnationals be the lead applicant from Felix in Kisumu County?
Sure. What you call by subnational, meaning local companies in the, yeah, of course. I mean, it's even better, I would say, but you will need to put together a consortium, meaning you need to identify an international partner, and then so the consortium is an obligation for everybody, but you can be the lead applicant indeed.
Perfect. One very follow-up question on the regional share was not replied. This is because we don't have, I remember this question was on the consortia, whether a percentage needs to come from one country or the other. We don't have such strict requirements. Applications from consortiums are required, and proposals must be submitted by this international consortia, which may be composed by public, private, research entities, even think tanks, or it can be any combination of these, as long as they have proven experience in the sustainable cooling sector. The only two requirements we have for this partnership is a strong level of local content and local presence, including through the engagement of local stakeholders, and this can be proven either by a letter of intent or a memorandum of understanding signed by the consortium partners. I hope that answers the question. Miriam, feel free to add.
Yeah, I just would like to add that we are the UN, so we are very neutral in a sense that all the countries, all the applications coming from anywhere in the world will be treated the same way. So regardless of how much funding you're asking or so every project, every proposal, all the applicants will be evaluated the exact same way. We are obliged by our UN rules to really comply with that neutrality, to have a neutral and objective positioning on how we evaluate all our proposals.
Okay, apparently there is one last question. Maybe it's in the chat. Q&A.
Yeah, the people who raises their hand, it will be nice that we cannot give you the floor because if not, we'll never end. It will be nice if possible to write your questions on the chat or on the Q&A section. Anyway, if we don't respond to your question now, we will do it in writing, and it will be added to that Q&A form that Rosie has mentioned. It will be daily updated, so for every single question we have. So it is important for you to do it in writing, so that we can answer you.
Yes, apparently there is one on research
yes,
project.
Rossi, Miriam, there is
Yes.
one from Ismail. I'm Annalida Pansini from MASE side. Is about the contribution from academic and scientific in the consortium. It's about the TRAL technologies. I mean, if it can be a sort of research project, but I mean, what we are trying to implement is not research project. Clearly, are mature technologies, reliable technologies that can be applied in the African countries and Brazil. So it's not a research initiative.
Perfect. Thank you, Anna Lydia, for bringing this question forward. Yes, we'll think about the matchmaking platform. As we mentioned, we don't currently have it. There are also some GDPR rules that we have to check, but we'll let you know. We'll keep, again, the FAQ document is a live document, so we'll keep updating this. Please check it. A lot of the answers are there. Okay. I think, Miriam, do you see anything else? I'm trying to multitask.
What I just want to say, I mean, any question that is not being answered will be done in writing. So
yes, please. You have received our email address. It's a message in the Q&A at the very beginning. It basically shares both websites of the UN and our implementing partner, and there are 2 email addresses. So please reach out to us if your question was not answered. Please keep checking our website. And again, we hope that today's session has provided a clear understanding of the objectives of the EPIC Deploy initiative, the scope of the call for proposals, and the opportunities available for international consortia that are interested in advancing sustainable cooling solutions. So thank you once again for joining us today. We really look forward to receiving your proposals and working together to advance sustainable cooling worldwide, but in the 5 target countries to start with, and I look forward to reading your emails. On behalf of UNEP, Politecnico, BASE, the speakers, join me in thanking the participants today. Thank you.